Hello to everyone in the Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Cathedral community and all of our friends. This is Father Jonathan. I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be continuing our weekly series, Sunday Scripture with Father Jonathan, with a little bit of a departure from our usual activity by articulating not only what the Scripture says for this day, although we will touch on it, but really understand what the meaning of today's theme is, the Sunday of All Saints. Now, in the scripture reading, we hear from the 11th chapter of the book of Hebrews about a certain select number of Old Testament saints and their activities, what they went through, what positive things they did, and also what they suffered. But also recognizing that though they hoped for a greater salvation, they did not receive it until the coming of Christ. Now, this is important, of course, and if we go back and read all of Hebrews chapter 11, we'll see kind of like the greatest hits of Old Testament saints to see what they've done and who they are, and by faith what they accomplished, which is really important. But one thing that we must remember is many of these people were at times ordinary. They were simply living their lives and they received a call from God to act. But we all have a call, a vocation. We're called to love God and love our neighbor. This is a deep call of the gospel. This is what we're called to do in the midst of the world. And we're called in this way to be like them, who themselves were, even in anticipation, like Christ. And so what are we called to? Well, if we're called to love God with all our heart and mind and soul and strength, and our neighbors as ourselves, what are we called to be? We're called to be saints. All saints is a reminder of what the hope that we all have is that we will be in union with God. A saint isn't someone who has done something profoundly miraculous, profoundly impressive. A saint is someone who, in their circumstances, have lived authentically in communion with their God. Someone with the title Saint, Oagios, Iaia, is someone who lives a holy life. And we learned in some of our videos on the Beatitudes, or we will learn in a few to come, that God is the source of all life and holiness. And so a saintly life is a life well lived in relationship to God, that manifests the love of God and love for neighbor in the midst of the world. We're all called to be saints. At today's service, we'll be also remembering our young people who are graduating. And they might be thinking, what am I supposed to do with my life? But we know one of the things, and the most important thing we're supposed to be doing, is loving God and loving our neighbor. We're supposed to become saints. And this isn't an idea of pride. This isn't so that we can become superheroes or something spectacular or someone prestigious. We're not even called to much success, as we've talked about in other videos before, at least in worldly terms. We're called to be in communion with our God, to become saints. Called to be who we are in relation to God. And what a great joy this is. So when we hear that we're celebrating All Saints, it's not for us to just pass over and say, how many great saints have there been? It's to say, let me live in a way so that I too may find myself in union with God. Become a saint. And in that way, we will be fulfilling our call, our vocation that we had from before we were even born, through our baptism and throughout our life. To be a saint isn't to be something spectacular. To be a saint is to be authentically ourselves. Ourselves in union with God, in love with God, and in love for our neighbor and the rest of creation. So that All Saints' Day may one day in the kingdom of heaven be not just about those people we read about in the lives of the saints, will be about all of us, all of creation, in communion with our God. God bless you. To those who have graduated and are off to do some new things in their lives, entering into a new stage of life, to the parents that are watching their young ones who are not so young anymore go out into something new. God bless you. Good strength to you. We're all here for you, praying for you. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. As you all know, I'll be working closely with the college students in the years to come. And so don't hesitate to reach out to me in those regards.